Wow. So things are going well so far. I didn't trip coming up, and I made it over Donner Summit. There's a lot of water on its way to you via the Yuba River. So I have some slides which would be really helpful to see, and some pointers for you. So my name is Kristin York, Vice President, Sierra Business Council. I am also, as Gil mentioned, a professor, a business professor. And at Presidio, we spend a lot of time researching and studying market failures. So areas of the economy that have not worked out so well for everyone, or where policy interventions have really not been effective. Things like housing and healthcare and broadband. And after 10 years of teaching that and a year and a half of talking to businesses that were very distressed, I don't want to talk about it today. So I'm going to talk about things that have gone right during the pandemic and some wins. So as you can see on this slide, I'll just keep going, that's fine. I know what it says. So about 2.5 years ago, Sierra Business Council conducted a survey to support our Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or CEDS as it's known. And that survey asked what were, among many, many other things throughout the region, but what are the strengths? And for Nevada County, we had a number of them. And we had, that's not the slide, just so you know. We had a lot of weird answers, which are always entertaining, but we also had some very consistent answers. And you can go to the second slide, please. Thank you. So the consistent things were things like arts and culture, and talent, entrepreneurship, leadership, cannabis, agriculture, natural resources, trails. Back one, please. Thank you, perfect. Healthcare. I mean, we're lucky in this county. We have 2 great hospitals, right, for rural healthcare. So we had a lot of strengths. We had a good idea of what they were. I'm not going to talk about the weaknesses that came up. Next slide, please. Over the past year and a half, our office has fielded about 20,000 calls from businesses throughout the region, not just Nevada County. And we got a good, you can go ahead and advance, please. We got a good idea of what businesses were most concerned about. Things like access to capital, where do I find money? How can I get a hold of some money? Grants, loans, whatever it might be. How do I grow my business? How do I get out of my business? We had a lot of questions about succession planning, people that were ready to get out. They didn't have the valuation that they thought they might have. The family member was not interested. How do I start a business? And of course, hiring issues. So talking to all those businesses and talking to the people that were just blowing it off the charts, doing a great job, we noticed some trends. Can you advance 2 slides, please? Thank you. And those trends are that these business owners took Winston Churchill's advice, which we've heard many, many times, and did not let this crisis go to waste. They were first in line for money, for one, if they needed. Or they went into the pandemic well capitalized. They had run their business very successfully, and they were able to weather the storm. They were prepared, they had a plan, and they were able to pivot, not to overuse that word. And through these slides, I'm not going to show you a lot of graphs and charts because I'm pretty sure Dr. Thornburg has that covered. And I'm also going to try to not say the new normal or unprecedented. But I'm going to say that one time, and that is this unprecedented number of calls, we boiled it down to 3 things. Next slide first, please. Innovate, communicate, and patriate. So what do I mean by that? And I'll tell you. Next, please. So innovate. Henry Ford said, does anybody know what Henry Ford said when people asked what they wanted, when he asked people what they wanted? They said faster horses, right? Okay, next slide, please. So some people could look at this and think, oh my God, it's a pile of wood. But other business owners can look at that and see a complete opportunity. Next slide, please. One of those businesses is a couple brothers that we work with, and they have a very busy defensible space business. But they also realized as the price of lumber went up and people couldn't get lumber, particularly for decorative purchases, architectural, that they could actually, as they were clearing trees on people's land, they could mill that wood on site and it could be used for decorative purposes. They're not making perfect 2x4s, which, as we know, there aren't any anymore, but they're taking that wood and milling it on site and storing it and reselling it, and they're going gangbusters, and they've added a whole crew, brothers and cousins primarily. Next slide, please. Also, right here in Nevada County, Ladris Technologies, Leo and his team have identified this problem of wildfires and decided to do something about it. Next slide, please. They have developed an artificial intelligence solution to help the county, who is working with them on a pilot, and the town of Truckee working with them on a pilot, to identify evacuation routes, safety ratings, forecasts when fires are approaching, et cetera. So it's fascinating to watch. They are in the fundraising. We have 2 counselors working. I think 1 might be here, maybe. And it's really exciting to watch. Next slide, please. Another innovation, this business is actually in Durango, Colorado, and they're moving their first location to California in Taylorsville. But in my opinion, they should be in every forested community in Northern California. So these 2 guys, if you've probably heard of cross-laminated timber, and in a cross-laminated timber building, we're building a 15-story building, and the building codes don't really work. Well, these guys have figured out how to use pine and Douglas fir, which typically is not used for our species anyway, for cross-laminated timber, and they make it basically in a Quonset hut with wood that they clear off private land and Forest Service land. These are small diameter trees. They have built their own solar kiln, and they assemble these panels right in their Quonset hut, and they're able to build modular homes. Pretty exciting. So stay tuned, because when they come to Taylorsville, we're going to want them to expand to Nevada County. Next slide, please. And this is pretty exciting. So between the ERC and Sierra Commons, we have put on hundreds of workshops in the past year and a half. And what's interesting is the Business Igniter course you may have heard of through Sierra Commons has had over 200 participants. That's about a 3-fold increase that we normally see in the size. But what's also interesting is that the average age of the entrepreneurs that we're talking to are about 15 years older than normal. So you hear about the great resignation. This is the great reorganization, people leaving to do something that they really wanted to do. And that's pretty exciting. Next slide. Okay, communicate. So the elephant in the room is always broadband, right? What are we doing about broadband? Why don't we have it? And it's a super, super complicated question. And I don't have enough time to talk about it, but what I can tell you is that your county has stepped up and helped 5 ISPs with grants to connect this county, and they continue to do more. They're also the first in the state of California to start a programmatic environmental impact report that will streamline the permitting for future projects. And I think that investment in time, energy, and money is pretty notable for Nevada County. Next, please. I threw this in here. Rick and Christy Brown, this is technically right over the border. Rick and Christy were both laid off of their jobs in March of 2019. Very good paying jobs. And they spent about the first 6 weeks trying to figure out what to do, thinking maybe this will end and we're going to go back to work, and should we do unemployment, should we not? And they got a wild hair to do something they always wanted to do, open up a coffee cart. So they did. If you go to the Home Depot in Auburn, you will see them. And I have to say, this is the happiest coffee maker I've ever met in my life. Talking to him, they have an expanded menu. They're under-communicate because they have built this business by communicating with their customers. They offer specials, they offer catering, and they have built this thing. It's so successful that they have opened a second location. Next, please. Patriate. So, does anybody know what this picture is? I blew it up, so it's hard to tell. Yes, container ships. This fascinates me more than anything right now is our global supply chain issue, right? So the mess that is going on in our supply chain. I blew this up. It's interactive. You can see this real time, but they're all over the map and for a variety of reasons. But number one, we buy too much junk. And number two, we had some disruptions. I used to be a lean manufacturing director for a advanced composites company. And just-in-time inventory was a really important thing. But when your just-in-time inventory is not working or backs up or the domino falls backwards instead of forwards, you have a major problem on your hand. So when I say patriate, I mean, how do we get away from this problem? And it's really, really difficult, right? If you've tried to buy a car or a pair of shoes or remodel your house, you know what I'm talking about. Next slide, please. But we have some businesses that have cracked this. So up in Truckee, this is a garage door company that has been around for about 30 years. And they do service. They build some doors. They have a door shop. But early on, the owner noticed he couldn't get springs and he couldn't get certain supplies and wood was going up. And he decided, they'll buy from like carriage house doors and they couldn't get them. They were out 9, 10, 12 months or never. So they cleaned out the shop, expanded it. They had all the tools already. They brought in another master carpenter, and they are building now, designing and building all their own doors. Forget the supply chain. Springs, he went around to, called around to anybody that might be going out of business or have extra inventory, went around and bought them all. Not just-in-time inventory at all, but guess what? Now he's built in resilience to his business. He's no longer reliant on that massive supply chain. He's doing it himself. Next slide, please. I think they're in the audience, right? Liam and Kira. So I missed a tour of Curious Forge another day, please. But talk about two amazing people that have built Curious Forge. They have noticed that there is a shortage of welders in our community. In fact, in many, many trades, we have a shortage. And they have putting together, in partnership with the ERC, a program to train and certify welders. Similarly, there's a makerspace in Truckee that has started a fix-it clinic for all those things that you can't go out and replace. And it is so popular, they just keep booking and booking and booking. So yay to our makers. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right. I think our local food system, we talk about Briar Patch and Tahoe Food Hub and other businesses here, is a perfect example of how not to rely on a global food system, right? If you're a farmer in the Midwest, you're in a heck of a lot of trouble. You grow a lot of soybeans, you can't get a container to send them back for processing. The food is basically going bad. The Tahoe Food Hub is a nonprofit, about 7 years in, that now has a fully sustainable business model. They operate a store, a food box, and most of their food is sourced from Western Nevada County. They go into Placer, El Dorado, and over into Butte. But they buy from 50 farms. Last year, they put $1.7 million in food in sales, and they donated 4,500 boxes to families who were out of work in 1 year. That's pretty good, right? That's a local food system that's operating. And that was the whole mission that started to support local farms. Next, please. So when we looked at all these things that innovate, communicate, and patriate, I had to go back. I'm sorry, I'm a business school professor. I had to do this. But Jim Collins, Good to Great, has his Hedgehog Concept. And this is paraphrased. They're not his exact words. But what really worked is all of these business owners that I just talked about, they have a passionate interest. They focus on their strengths. And they have an economic fit, meaning you always hear about tech businesses and they're going to scale and they're going to go big and they're going to go global. Well, most of our clients at the Small Business Development Center don't want to do that. They want to support their family. They want to buy a home. They want to stay in their community. They want their kids to come back to the community. And this is really important to remember because it's important for you remembering it's why we have to support our local businesses. So in the beginning, I said I wasn't going to say the new normal, and I'm not. Next slide, please. But I'm going to leave you with a couple things. And one is we have had this system, our economic system, that has clearly been blown up, and I'm sure Dr. Thornburg has a lot to say about this. But you know what? We also have people that figured out how to build a new model and make it work, and that's important. Next slide. So it's not about new normal. This is about new community. This is about really sticking together as a community, and Jason said it great. We did, right? There was some amazing philanthropy that came through this community that saved people. There was the county with its generosity of federal dollars, putting them back into the community. Not every county did that. Most did not. And I think we should be grateful that we live here and that we have each other. Thank you.